Welcome to another live stream, folks. Week 7 is here and just a couple of hours away, actually just over an hour away from taking off. We're here to answer all of your fantasy football related questions and provide all updates that I have seen this morning as I compiled my notes together. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you are getting value out of this content. We're on the road to 900, trying to build this audience each and every day. But most importantly, make sure you comment your lineups. Make sure you comment any start-sit questions, last-minute trade questions you may have rolling into Week 8. And let's take off. I am always willing to grade your teams. And yeah, if you want to toss those in the chat or answer any of your questions, I will do that. Christian McCaffrey still questionable against Minnesota. CMC did suffer an oblique injury last week. Jordan Mason and Elijah Moore, I called him George Mason in a video earlier this week, would be in line for a greater workload this week if he is out again. That's against the Vikings in prime time. So we have a little time for that, but we don't want to hold our breath too much. If you have CMC and if you got an alternative guy who's playing in prime time as well, or maybe in those 3:25 games if we're talking Central Time, just those second afternoon slots, maybe we do that because I'm not too confident on just waiting out Christian McCaffrey. We could get a snap count. Deebo Samuel will stay on the 49ers. He's out for at least 2 weeks with a fractured shoulder. He's got increased volume opportunity now for guys like Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. Samuel is second on the team with 32 targets. He's right behind Brandon Ayuk, who has a few more than him. It's a run-heavy team in San Francisco regardless, so keep in mind this could also impact other running backs, considering that San Francisco does run the ball more often than anybody else at greater than 50%. And we know that Deebo Samuel does have some type of contribution out of the backfield as well. He'll get a couple carries a game. Justin Fields expected to miss 2 to 3 weeks. All of a sudden, the need for a filling QB with a bit more stability grows in importance. Tyson Bagent is not somebody I would recommend you using as a fill-in unless he really shows out today, but this is not an offense in the Bears where you can just plug a QB in to get 300 passing yards and a couple of passing touchdowns right away. Could be wrong. Hope I'm wrong. I am a Bears fan, but logistically, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense unless you're in a very deep league, and Bagent is quite literally the best option that you have. Hunter Henry is good to go against Buffalo, a defense that has looked more like the bend but don't break mentality. They haven't been as stifling as we've seen in years past. Pat Freiermuth on IR with a hamstring injury. Now, this one hurts, folks, because I was grabbing Freiermuth in the 7th, 8th, 9th rounds. Really thought that he, considering his value, was falling in drafts a lot. I like the 6.5 targets per game we saw out of Freiermuth last year, but unfortunately, the injury bug bit him, and in general, this Pittsburgh Steelers offense does not look good. So even when Freiermuth was healthy, I really didn't like the numbers that he was putting up. Kareem Hunt on the Browns, he's undergoing a pregame workout, so this is a true game time decision. All things considered, I need you to understand this. If somebody is going through a pregame workout, it means they're not 100% until somebody sees something they either like or don't like right ahead of kickoff. Even if Kareem Hunt plays, he's probably not going to be playing under his usual workload. We're probably going to see more Jerome Ford and less Kareem Hunt. It's got to be a snap count. If this team, and if Kareem Hunt doesn't know if he can go until right before game time, I have a really hard time believing, really difficult time believing, that all of a sudden this guy's going to jump in and have a usual Kareem Hunt game. And again, he's just coming back to this team, only a couple games in since rejoining the Browns. A lot of things have to go right, so not too confident on Kareem Hunt here. But yeah, if you're in a situation where Kareem Hunt would have been your flex or your running back too, go get somebody like Darrell Henderson or Royce Freeman. We'll talk about those two folks later. We do have a plug-and-play segment that we're going to go through. If Hunt goes, I mean, we saw him get a notable amount of usage alongside Jerome Ford, but again, I really don't think, considering what we're hearing right now, a true game-time decision, that he is going to get his usual workload. And we don't even know what that is yet. He just joined the team. Darrell Henderson and Royce Freeman expected to see the majority of the workload against Pittsburgh. The Rams are 3-point favorites on the road against the Steelers. Game script could favor one of these two. If your initial running back room is mostly healthy in fantasy right now, I would not go out of your way to go and get one of these guys. They are what I would distinguish and call an emergency plan. I mean, we don't really know who's going to get more. Is it Darrell Henderson? Is it Royce Freeman? We've seen more of Henderson on this team, especially referring to last year, than Freeman, so maybe that's the answer. But we are really, really picking from not much here. Deshaun Watson expected to play against the Indianapolis Colts. A little context on that matchup. Indianapolis allows 244 passing yards per game. That helps Amari Cooper's case, but he showed conditions don't have to be great for him to perform, as he had 4 receptions for over 100 yards in a win against San Fran last week. Daniel Jones is out once again. Tyrod Taylor will take over in his spot. I want you all to keep in mind that Wan'Dale Robinson was the number one target on the team last week with Tyrod Taylor under center. The Commanders' defense allows over 29 points per game. That's the third highest mark in the league. I think the Giants are going to score a decent amount. I'm not claiming they're going to go out and put up 40-plus points, but this could be one of their better offensive showings this year. Plug and plays. All right, I'm going to switch over here. We are going to go to sleeper and kind of walk through the value of each of these guys. Again, I hope you folks are doing well on this Sunday morning. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if any of this information is helpful to you. And if it's not, ask questions. Ask what you want answered. And actually, we're just going to run through these in general. Sorry, bear with me here. There we are. Alrighty, let us jump in here and begin with Sam Howell. I've been talking about Sam Howell for a couple of weeks. Sam Howell is somebody who has a lot of pressure by the team around him. I mean, this is a guy who really doesn't have a whole lot in terms of defensive support. This offense needs to put up a lot of points to stay competitive, and they've been doing so. They're coming off an impressive, I don't want to call it impressive, but a win against Atlanta. The Atlanta offense once again sputtering out. Desmond Ridder throwing 3 picks. But we've got somebody who needs to throw the ball a lot. He's top 5 in the league in passing attempts coming into week 7. Did toss 3 touchdown passes for the first time in his career against a really tough Atlanta secondary. So I do want to give him credit for that. But he's got a defense that is allowing 29.3 points per game. All right, this is a defense that is allowing the third most amount of points per game in the league right now. In other words, regardless of how this offense looks, at some point they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. And it's most likely going to happen as the game progresses because the defense is so poor. All right, so Sam Howell on a team that throws the ball 67% of the time. That is the third highest mark in the league as well. And if you look at the teams that have a horrible defense, allowing some of the most points per game, and you look at teams that are throwing the ball at a high frequency or very often, there is a huge correlation, and I would imply causation there as well. All right, so there is Sam Howell. Next, we're going to go to Tyrod Taylor. This one's another emergency play. I would not go out of my way to start Tyrod Taylor if I've got other options, but if we are truly scraping the bottom of the barrel, not the best week last week. Did not turn the ball over. Fumbled one, but didn't lose it. Not much rushing upside. The only reason I'm really thinking about Tyrod Taylor here is because of the fact that he's going up against the Commanders. The Commanders don't look good. All right, I just said this before. The Commanders allowing 29.3 points per contest. It's not a great situation, and that's why I would use Tyrod Taylor to try and capitalize on this. MA football guys in here, how is it going, man? It says Corey, Flex, Watson, or Godwin. Christian Watson or Chris Godwin. Christian Watson, healthy. Got a ton of snaps a couple of weeks ago after being worked in week 4. Got the bye week, obviously. And he's going up against Denver's defense. I'm thinking Christian Watson has a much higher ceiling. Chris Godwin should get a decent amount of looks with Mike Evans being shadowed by A.J. Terrell. But in all honesty, I'm probably going Christian Watson PPR. All right, if this is PPR, I do think we're going to get somebody who's going to be able to expose a horrible defense in Denver that is allowing 33 points per contest. I'm going to go Christian Watson out of the two. Again, folks, just running through some updates here. I'm going through some plug and plays right now. Yeah, believe it or not, Tyrod Taylor is one of them, with his opposition being the Washington Commanders this week. We're trying to capitalize on weak defenses. That's mainly what is happening here. So yeah, feel free to pop any questions that you have in the chat, and I will get to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much for joining again today here, MA Football guys. So we've got Tyrod Taylor and Sam Howell under the belt. Let's go to the running backs. D'Onta Foreman, not my favorite. Not my favorite at all. But he hasn't really done anything wrong. He hasn't had a whole lot of usage, so it's not the best situation in the world. But we do have somebody who had a solid performance as the lead back, as we've got here, 4.33 yards per carry in standard and half-point PPR. I am a lot more excited about this because he is getting an increased opportunity. He has looked fine. We're talking about someone who really throughout his whole career has just been a workhorse, somebody who, when his number gets called, he's going to do well. No problem, MA. Anytime, man. Keep asking those questions. Any questions you've got. But we've got somebody who's consistently averaged over 4 yards per carry in all but 1 year, and I'm really not counting this. He had 7 attempts the whole year. But we've also just got somebody who's on an offense that might be working from behind. And if that happens, especially considering that Foreman's really not a pass-catching back, I think we might be in trouble. I really do. So, half, standard, I'm good with that. Full PPR, you've got to do some convincing and a little mental gymnastics to convince me that D'Onta Foreman's going to have a great day. But also we have to understand it's Brian Hoyer against Tyson Bagent. Not that Jimmy Garoppolo would have made a huge difference, but we would have had an NFL veteran going up against, well, they're both NFL veterans. We would have had an active NFL veteran going up against Tyson Bagent, whereas Brian Hoyer's been pretty dormant for a while. But we do have an efficient back in D'Onta Foreman. It's not a sustainable measure that we're taking. I think in a couple of weeks when Roschon's back, when Khalil Herbert's starting to come back, this guy could get lost in the mix again. But, we're going to deal with what we can and try and capitalize now. All right. Brian Pereira says, worried about starting Adams tonight, man. Unfortunately, thinking about starting Watson over him. All righty. So, with that, I can't really blame you because Christian Watson is going up against the worst defense in the league, right? Christian Watson's opposition, and I'll exit out of here, is giving up so many points they should get a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, they're donating points on a routine basis. There's Denver, allowing over 33 points per contest. Brian, I can't blame you. I will say Davante Adams against that secondary could be all right, but yeah, obviously with the talks of him maybe wanting to get traded and now there's announcements that he won't be, the fact that even has to be clarified is of concern to me. I wouldn't blame you for taking Watson right now. In my wide receiver rankings, it was a much different story, but that was before we got all this talk really starting to cycle in about Davante Adams not being happy with the situation, and we knew that, right? We completely expected something like this to happen when the whole reason that Davante Adams went over to Las Vegas and Derek Carr left. The Raiders gave up on him. It was Jared Stidham time, who's not even on the team anymore. Josh McDaniels didn't seem to have any interest in continuing to use Derek Carr. And now Davante Adams, just a year after making this commitment when he seemed like he was going to be a lifelong Packer, is stranded. So I would not blame you for starting Watson. I really wouldn't, in all honesty. MA Football Guy says, I'm a Pats fan, so it's pretty much all fantasy for me this season. Hey, I'm a Bears fan. That's why I'm in this. I would much rather control the results and maybe get a few more wins than a team that's in contention for the number 1 overall pick and maybe the number 2 if the Panthers keep losing. Skeeter says, Bears or Lions defense? We're probably going Bears because they are relatively healthy, Skeeter, if we look here. I mean, it's not pretty what Chicago has done by any means. 29.3 points per game allowed. The Lions doing way better at 18.8 points, but they are going up against a relatively healthy, all things considered, right? You've got the usual and J.K. Dobbins being out there, or not being out there, but relatively healthy Bears team. This is not a team that gets a whole lot of sacks, so, I mean, we're mainly relying on not a whole lot of points. Oh, Eddie Jackson is out. Okay. Back end help. I don't know how much Brian Hoyer is going to sling it deep, but just because of a lackluster offense that we have, I think it's going to be a lot of running between Josh Jacobs and D'Onta Foreman, considering we have, a very experienced quarterback under center for Las Vegas and Brian Hoyer, but just not somebody who's played at a high level in a long time and really had a solidified role. And then we have Tyson Bagent making his first career start, the D2 Heisman recipient. So, maybe we go Lions here. Back end help is a pretty big deal. I'm going back and forth, but also the Bears just don't accumulate a whole lot of sacks. Even if the Lions end up giving 20, 23, 27 points to the Ravens, I'm not feeling too bad about it because I think they have a much better chance at getting some turnovers, getting some sacks, poking some fumbles free, picking some people off. So yeah, Skeeter, I'm kind of going to go 180 on you and say we roll with the Lions here. I think they're going to actually cause some more problems even if they allow some points. Should I keep the Lions defense for further games? Yes, and I would actually start him now. Understanding that Eddie Jackson, the back end of this team on defense, is out, and in general, they're just not able to force a whole lot of turnovers and get sacks. I'm actually more of a fan of the Lions, even though they're facing a much tougher opponent this week in Lamar and the Ravens. All right, MA Football Guy saying, I would honestly elevate Myers over Adams. That's my Ridley League. Oh, my. I may start my own fantasy pod, but I couldn't hold a candle to you. Hey, man, if you start anything, let me on. I'd love to come on and talk and kind of help whoever's watching me and listening to me go over to yours. And if you need any help setting things up, I'm running off OBS right now. I'm always a fan of growing the community. So by all means, if you want to do that, I spend a lot of time on this because my Bears suck. And I do have kind of a passion for it. But yeah, Skeeter, I'm rolling with the Lions this week and a lot of weeks moving forward. Plenty of pressure up front with Aiden Hutchinson. The defense in general has looked a lot better. Again, talking about a team that has allowed south of 19 points per game in Detroit. This is not the defense that we even saw last year. They're getting stronger. They're getting more experience. They're getting more sound. And I'm a big fan of it. What do you think of Ramondre Stevenson this week? Shockingly, I actually like him. I was a big Ramondre Stevenson fan coming into the year, and then I flipped to 180 a couple of weeks ago because of his lack of production outside of the pass-catching game, and I said Ezekiel Elliott might be a couple of weeks away from taking his job. Buffalo allows 5.4 yards per carry. Despite their reputation of having a phenomenal brick wall defense, that has not been the case with the front seven. Teams have been able to run through them. So I actually like Ramondre Stevenson a lot. We also have somebody in Ramondre Stevenson who, had his most efficient game this past week, but this is why we get Ramondre Stevenson, especially if you're in PPR. Not sure if you are. We get him for the targets. We get him for the fact that he had 88 targets last year, caught about a little under 80% of those. Got an extra, what is this? 69 points, 42 points. Got an extra 111 points in the receiving game. 117 with the receiving game. All right. This is why we go and invest in Ramondre Stevenson. And through the first couple of weeks, it hasn't looked promising. It's starting to get better. 88 divided by 17, we're talking about somebody who's averaging 5 targets per game. Here he's averaging 4. We're really splitting hairs. This offense is horrible. Ramondre Stevenson obviously was hurt middle of the week, but is off the injury report now. Against a Buffalo team that is allowing 5.4 yards per carry, the second highest rate in the NFL, I'm actually a pretty big Ramondre Stevenson fan this week. So that's my answer there. All right. MA Football Guy saying, what's OBS? I don't even know if I can show it on here. Let's see. I will try. Oh my. Well, this is going to be trippy, but I'll just flash it real quick for you, MA. This is where I'm handling all my audio levels. I've got your comments over here. There's Skeeter saying, I have to start Geno this week. I'm worried. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, that's something, right? There's my preview window and my program window, so I can transition and take a new screen. Where I choose to stop and start streaming here, I can add different audio sources, different video sources. I have different tabs. There's my intro, all that stuff. So, MA, if you are serious about starting something like this, I'll get you my contact info here, and we can kind of talk, and I can help get you off the ground. Once you get into a routine, it's not too bad. But yeah, that's OBS. Just kind of lets you screen record and do a couple of other features. Sorry, bro, I may just have to broadcast from my phone. Hey, it is what it is. You can broadcast from your phone. That is also possible. Skeeter worried about starting Geno Smith this week. Geno hasn't looked great, but it is the Cardinals. So we do have that going for us. Definitely hasn't looked like he did last year. Hasn't looked horrible. 6 touchdowns to 3 picks. Not much rushing upside. Quarterback 24. The best performance he's actually had this year was that miraculous game against the Detroit Lions that came down to the wire. But all things considered, outside of the LA game, when he's fully healthy, we don't have too much to complain about. I mean, last week was rough too, right? But without the two turnovers, we got a 300-plus yard performance. We got some rushing upside. We're really here to see Geno score, to use those best tools around him in DK Metcalf, in Jackson Smith-Njigba, in Tyler Lockett. So, yeah, I'll let you on either way. No problem, man. Other options kind of suck on waivers. Skeeter, just curious, what are the other options on waivers? I'm wondering. Because Sam Howell and I hate to say it, but Tyrod Taylor going up against the Washington Commanders could be an appealing matchup because Washington is allowing over 29 points per game. Baker Mayfield is like the other best option. Would not take Baker against Atlanta's secondary. I mean, we can look at the numbers here. Atlanta, pretty stingy through the air. This is honestly kind of baffling to me because Atlanta has a defense that you could say the Achilles heel for the last few years has been their pass defense. But Atlanta, all the way up here, allowing south of 180 yards through the air on a game-by-game basis. Would not try that with Baker. We're going to have A.J. Terrell lining up, probably toe-to-toe and shadowing Mike Evans if I had to guess. They're not going to play man the whole game, but this is a team that has the personnel to be able to play man. Yeah, I mean, we could go with that. Tyrod is on waivers. Tyrod Taylor, my case with him is just that he's going up against a team in Washington that allows a lot of points, 29.3 points per game, gave up a 40 clip to the Bears. I mean, I don't think that the Giants' offense is in prime position against anybody right now to put up 30+, but Tyrod could get a couple of touchdowns. Specifically, depending on what the usage situation with Saquon Barkley is. I'm not confident in Baker Mayfield. Out of Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, and Tyrod Taylor, I'm probably going Geno and Tyrod and Baker, believe it or not, because of the opposition they're playing. Baker and Tyrod are kind of tied in my book. That sounds gross to say. All right, Edward on here. Good to see you, man. Good morning, man. Already asked this question, but I forgot to start Kirk and now need to choose one of them. Okay, so we've got DJ Moore, Jakobi Meyers, Javonte Williams, PPR. Maybe Jakobi Meyers against that secondary. I can't believe I'm saying that because obviously Devontae Adams should reign supreme. Again, folks, happy Sunday morning, happy week 7. We are answering any and all questions that you have, any and all fantasy-related questions that you have on this Sunday morning, so please feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you appreciate what we're doing here. Jakobi Meyers' usage situation is not bad. I mean, it is a 3-horse race with the third horse actually being Josh Jacobs. That's the one reason he's fantasy relevant right now. Not too big of a fan otherwise of somebody who's averaging 2.9 yards per carry. Again, this is somebody in Josh Jacobs who we're going to give the benefit of the doubt to a bit because he wasn't in training camp. But there's not much place for patience in fantasy when you've got somebody who's a third of the way through the season and is performing like this outside of the receiving game. I probably go Jakobi Meyers. DJ Moore. Edward, DJ Moore is somebody who may see the ball a decent amount, but there is the Tyson Bagent factor. We don't know much about the kid. We know he can get rid of the ball quick. That's kind of what Luke Getsy was doing when he had to slot him in against the Minnesota Vikings. So we're going to have to rely on yards after the catch, which I think DJ Moore can do. But overall, Jakobi Meyers, especially with the Devontae Adams situation going on right now, against that secondary that now is missing their safety in Eddie Jackson, I like Jakobi Meyers. Javonte Williams is just not on a great offense. Not that any of these guys are, but in PPR, we want a true pass catcher, and Javonte Williams has been outworked a couple of times by Jaleel McLaughlin. Excuse me. Very tired this morning, apparently. But, yeah. MA football guys saying flex Sutton or Dobbs. I was advised Sutton. Cortland Sutton against Jair Alexander. I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of that. Romeo Dobbs does have the second most amount of red zone targets on the Packers. I believe I saw he has 8. Can check that here. Really wishing all of you the best of luck this week. About halfway through before your playoffs start. I'm thinking like your playoffs would start week 13, 14, 15, depending on the league format. All right, we have somebody in We have somebody in Romeo Doubs who's second on the team in red zone targets, first on the team in receiving touchdowns. Obviously doesn't have the best catch percentage in it being 50. I mean, that's probably middle of the road in all honesty, but... And then we have Courtland Sutton, who's been pretty touchdown dependent. And again, Jerry Jeudy has not looked good at all, so I think Sutton is retaking his place as the wide receiver 1. Usage-wise, we've got some inconsistency for sure. 6 targets, 3 targets, 5 targets, 11 targets, 7, 5. So if we can get somebody who's averaging over 6 targets a game, I'm usually not complaining, but the fact we've got 1 under, 2 under, 3 under, and it's pretty much a coin toss in terms of whether or not Courtland Sutton's going to see more than 6 targets, and he's got to line up against Jair Alexander. I mean, the pass defense for Green Bay has actually been their strength. They've had trouble running the ball, or stopping the run. But this is somebody who, when he doesn't score a touchdown, which has only happened twice, he's got a 2.3 point performance here, 11.6, we'll take those. Whereas at least with Romeo Doubs, I mean, he's going up against the worst defense in the league in the Denver Broncos. We talked about this a couple times already today, allowing 33.3 points per game. In about the same spot, except he's played 1 less game and has 1 more target. So we've got somebody who's averaging in the ballpark of 13 targets, or 7 targets per game. Problem is, obviously, it is boom or bust. Is this guy going to get thrown to 12 or 13 times? Is he going to get thrown to 3, 4, or 5 times? It's worse than a toss-up for your odds right now. Low catch percentage, 21 for 37, is nearing that deadly 50% mark. I actually will go Sutton. I will go Sutton. I think Doubs has the better matchup, but I think Sutton's got more usage. Wide receiver 1 was his rationale, and that's fair with Christian Watson back and rested. That is definitely fair. Richard is in here. How's it going, Richard? Full PPR, need to flex Amari Cooper or Sam Laporta. I'm going to go Amari Cooper with Deshaun Watson back and the Cleveland Browns going toe-to-toe with a secondary in Indianapolis that has given up a decent amount this year. We've got a team that's giving up, I want to say 242, 243 passing yards per game. I know they're bottom 10, just barely. Yeah, 244. Weak opposition. I like tight ends to an extent. You're going to have to find a very extreme scenario to convince me to throw a tight end in a flex spot when you've got somebody else like Amari Cooper who he's had a couple down games, but for the most part has been reliable. When you can perform like this against San Fran, that's pretty promising. Had this dud, opening week stuff, but the usage has been there. This is somebody I really trust. 7 targets, 10 targets, 8, 6, and 8. Snap percentage consistently north of 70 with week number 1 being the exclusion. And remember, this guy was battling injury in the first couple of weeks. Really like Amari Cooper here over Laporta. No problem, MA football guy. No problem at all. Alrighty, let's go through, if I can find it. Let's go through the spreads and just talk a little bit about what that means, fantasy football-wise. If you have any other questions, please keep popping them in. No problem with that at all. But let's run through these spreads and just talk about what they mean and how important they really are when we discuss a situation like what's going on with the Bears and Raiders, where, 37.5 point total is also something to look at. This should be a relatively low scoring game. It should not be exciting. If you're excited for something like this, you're probably an old school football fan. Raiders favored by 2.5. This is a slugfest. Out of all the games I'm going to go over, this might be the one that you'd get the least from, because you have 2 backup quarterbacks, one in Brian Hoyer and one in Tyson Bagent in different spots. Bagent's making his first NFL start. Hoyer has had many starts, but hasn't been the guy on a team in a couple of years at least. We have the Davante Adams drama. Maybe Jakobi Meyers sees a little bit more. The main guy for Chicago that I'd be looking at, if, and I mean if, it's a big if, the offensive line can hold up, would be DJ Moore. Quick throws, we need yards after the catch. Chase Claypool's gone, so it would go Moore, Mooney, so on and so forth. Cole Kmet could be interesting too because he's middle of the field, and a young quarterback like Bagent doesn't have to scan the entirety of the field if this guy's just hanging right in front of him. Cole Kmet and DJ Moore, specifically because, and this is why I'm bringing up guys more like them as opposed to Deonta Foreman or anybody in the backfield. They are 3-point underdogs, we'll call it. Underdogs by a field goal. We're not going to rely too much on the run game because this team might have to go pass heavy. Now, this is a pretty balanced game. Chicago's at home. Kind of shocked the line isn't closer now that we know that Jimmy Garoppolo is out. And Richard says, full PPR, need a quarterback, Jordan Love or Deshaun Watson. I'm going Jordan Love, Richard. Jordan Love is playing against a Broncos defense allowing north of 33 points per game. This one's not difficult for me. Everybody should be healthy. Looks like Aaron Jones is trending towards playing. He's a pass-catching receiver or a pass-catching running back for sure. And then obviously we have Christian Watson being fully healthy now. I'm going Jordan Love, especially considering that Deshaun Watson nursing an injury. All right, so we've got the Bears thinking about their pass catchers. For the Raiders, if they can truly get this lead, if things pan out and you believe in Vegas, we go Josh Jacobs here. I do know that the Bears have a great run defense, but Josh Jacobs, and we can back that up here. The Bears have a great run defense, allowing 3.5 yards per carry, but Josh Jacobs is one of the most prevalent receiving backs right now. We're seeing a lot of checkdowns from Jimmy Garoppolo. He has not been efficient on the ground. 2.9 yards per carry would be enough to scare me off in most cases. But his pass catching upside is so prominent, I can't really stay away from it. Cleveland Browns minus 3.5 against the Indianapolis Colts. I really think the Colts could flip this one here. So this kind of goes, depending on your belief. There goes my phone. Depending on your belief in the situation. But the Browns and Colts, yeah. We've got a team in the Browns that looks fine, does have Jerome Ford, and does have Kareem Hunt. But in all honesty, I think, all right, if we just want to take Vegas's odds here straight up, we've got Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford, especially with Kareem Hunt looking like he'll be a game-time decision. Jerome Ford's going to do pretty well. Indianapolis Colts, we've got somebody who's persevered time and time again through numerous quarterbacks in Michael Pittman. So there is that. Buffalo Bills and New England Patriots. I love Stephon Diggs, but this team's going to win by 8 according to Vegas. So we want to think more James Cook range against the Patriots. Patriots, I can't really trust anybody outside of Ramondre right now. The receivers have not been great. The offense hasn't been great. Commanders minus 3. Curtis Samuel has been interesting, even though this is a closer game. You can kind of make the debate with a lot of these closer games. Minus 2.5, minus 3, minus 3, minus 3. You're okay with being confident with a consistent fantasy presence like Curtis Samuel. Like, on occasion, Terry McLaurin seems to be a little more boom or bust right now. Whereas with the Giants, Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm looking at a little more context here. We've got somebody who was the number 1 target for Tyrod Taylor last week. We've got Tyrod Taylor again. Rashad White should do well here. Looking for Jonnu Smith to keep the consistent flow going. He has had almost just as many targets as Kyle Pitts and actually more receptions. Lions-Ravens, this one could flip as well. Very close. We just want to look at our playmakers in Zay Flowers, in, knock on wood, Jahmyr Gibbs. Steelers-Rams, and again, I am just factoring spread in. You also want to look at strength of opposition. You want to look at yards per carry allowed. You want to look at pass yards allowed. You want to look at points allowed in total and strength of opposition, but there's that. So Edwards saying Commanders defense, Bears defense, or Buccaneers defense. Commanders defense I'd almost never take. They are looking pretty horrible. Bears defense or Bucks defense. Bucks defense I'm taking. The Atlanta Falcons are just scoring 16 points per contest. So in all honesty, yeah, I'm betting against that Atlanta offense a lot. So I'm probably going Buccaneers here. Folks, going to cut it short here. I hope you have a wonderful Week 7. I hope you do well in fantasy football. Hope I was able to help in terms of any advice that I was providing. This is Armchair Fantasy Football. I'm Corey, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Any other questions you've got, Pop them in the comment section of any of my videos. Pop them in here. Respond to a community post. I'm answering around the clock. I appreciate you all and hope you all have a great Sunday.